Okay, so there's a new phrase that I'll give you in a second that's floating around college football circles. It has been since about December, but the chickens are about to come home to roost if something is not done. We have one transfer portal in January. Brown references all the time. They can't go anywhere. The fear is that we will get a number here coming up at the end of April and the start of May, blind transfers, where people will leave programs and blind transfer to other programs without entering the transfer portal, and leave one school, enroll in another school. And that has been the fear that has been talked about for a long, long time. And so they're trying to come up with a way to penalize teams that sign players who transfer outside of the transfer portal.
Well, I think there's an easy way to do this now. I've thought about this after I saw Brendan Sorsby's getting sued from Cincinnati. You know, he takes $5 million, goes to Texas Tech to play for Joey McGuire, and Cincinnati's sitting there. We developed this quarterback. We gave him a scholarship, and now he's leaving us. We at least want $1 million out of this. I think you should take a percentage. I don't know what the percentage is.
I've got the rules proposed here.
Okay.
If you want
go
those.
ahead.
But Brendan Sorsby on that story, being sued by Cincinnati, him personally, not Texas Tech. He's gotten a $4 to $5 million deal with Texas Tech. He had a contract, as this story shows here, with Cincinnati. That was an 18-month contract that ran through December of 2026 that had a $1 million buyout. Cincinnati is suing Sorsby for that $1 million buyout. Now, usually franchises, teams, employers pay the buyouts. Oftentimes, we'll see if Texas Tech ends up paying this, or if they take it off of the contract Sorsby pays, or if for some reason Cincinnati doesn't get any money. So that's another big story there. The NCAA Division I FBS Oversight Committee are proposing this set of penalties. They did this yesterday, that now will be floated around to all the athletic departments, school presidents, and all of that, and they'll see if they can make it a rule that will prohibit a head coach from all football, recruiting, and on-the-field coaching and administrative duties, can't be in the building until the sixth contest of the season. So if you are a coach or a program that signs a player outside of the portal window, in other words, if you leave right now or in April or May, and say you leave an SEC school and go to a Big Ten school or vice versa, the team that signs you, their coach, cannot do anything inside the facility, including coaching games, until the sixth regular season game of the year. Plus, your school will be fined 20% of your football budget. Now, we're talking millions of dollars there. And we would reduce your number of roster spots by 5 for the next season.
Yeah, well, then nobody's going to be transferring out in the late period.
So, but can we go back to the start of this? So The way this works is so Lance is on the roster at Tennessee.
I'll read it word for word.
Okay,
you
go.
tell me. Blind transferring is a term that is being used now for a player that unenrolls at their current school and enrolls at a new school outside of January's transfer portal window. The possibility of players leaving after the spring semester and blind transferring is a real fear for some, while other programs are poised to add to their rosters.
So in other
That's
words,
from Pete Nakos on 3 Sports.
So Lance is at Tennessee and knows he's not getting on the field. So at the end of this semester coming up, and it's coming up very soon, at the end of this semester, he leaves Tennessee and enrolls at Louisville. And at Louisville, Jeff Brom's like, oh, Lance Taylor from Tennessee's on campus? Wow. That's amazing. We could use another tight end. You're a tight end, by the way.
That's okay.
We could use it's not an insult.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, we could use another tight end. And so all of a sudden, Lance Taylor gets invited out. And by the way, here's your NIL package, Lance. We don't have a scholarship for you. You're a walk-on, but there's your NIL package. So that's what they're suggesting is going to happen here.
Yeah, blind transferring, absolutely. And they go on, Pete Nakos writes, talking to a Power 4 general manager. I think schools are going to go after those kids. So if they have a signed agreement, schools and personnel staffs don't give a shit, quote, if we're going to be this transactional. There's going to be a ton of money that's going to need to be paid. That's just the reality of it. I'm sure it's going to happen. Schools are going to go after these kids. Schools should have deals in place that go from January to the end of the season. So that's where the buyout will be a factor. So this ties into the Sorsby thing and the buyouts. But without 2 transfer portal windows, most people believe even with those penalties, that we're going to end up with 1,000 court cases coming up in April and May.
You'll have to.
Well, people might be pushing back, but I think if you get a little footing on this, like this is a fascinating case study to me because I think it would deter a lot. I mean, you're talking about some severe penalties there.
Yeah, just financially.
Yeah, and if this could work some of those kinks out where you don't have a lot of the blind transfers, then maybe you can take a look at what you can do for compensation during the transfer window. And to me, that comes back to, let's just use Brendan Sorsby. If he's getting $5 million, hey, the school that he's leaving is getting 40 or 50% of his contract. They have to be compensated.
Well, and I've said that's what will slow this portal stuff down all along. Now, I think to do what you're talking about right there, they've already got buyouts in. Some of these schools have gotten smart quick because they've put buyouts in their NIL deals, but I don't know how enforceable these things are. As you see with Brendan Sorsby, this is going to get tied up in court probably, much like the Jaden Rashada one did, which I don't think had a buyout in it. Again, collective bargaining, these guys as employees, and a mandatory compensation will slow this down. Mandatory compensation, if I get a player from your school, I owe you X. That's going to slow this down a lot. I just foresee the court case being, wait a minute, I left Tennessee a student in good standing. I enrolled at Louisville. How can they tell me where I enrolled?
Okay.
They can't do that. I mean, that's going to be
a lot
the
of our
first argument.
conversation started off from the football coaches school side, protecting me from my guys leaving going to another school. And Brown, you just flipped it over. Now you're looking at it from a player.
That's right.
One of the attorneys, Darren Heitner, who has represented players in the past, and it's America.
I think he was Betty Occo's attorney, by the way.
It is comical that the NCAA, or really anyone at all, believes that it can prevent an individual from obtaining an education from the institution of his or her choice, assuming the institution accepted that individual. It's one of the most un-American policies I've ever heard of.
He's 100% right. Now, there's a difference in restricting an education and restricting your ability to play football. There is a difference in that.
You can go to Tennessee and go to class.
That's right. We're not telling you can't transfer to Louisville, Mr. Taylor, and go to class. We're telling you can't transfer there and play football. Or you can, but your coach can't coach for the first 6 weeks, and your school's going to pay $20 million, so you better be a dang good tight end.
I mean, this is the closest model we've got to the NFL, and this would never happen in any NFL world because of a players' association. And again,
and compensation.
Compensation, they ultimately, but I think this is where we talk about these guys becoming university employees.
Yeah,
and once we get to that point, if it ever happens, this stuff's impossible.
That's what we're getting to here.
But this is another example of, as a fan, that sort of makes me upset because we keep, finding a hole in the system and we patch that hole without reworking the whole system.
Right.
And now, we've got 2 transfer portals, and this is what happened. We got 2 transfer portals, and people like Kirby Smart are upset because I have now prepared this team through spring football. And now I've got guys who are leaving, who knows they're going to be 2s or 3s and going somewhere else after I've coached them all spring long, and now they're not on my roster when we come back in August. That was making coaches mad. So they were like, let's get rid of the spring transfers. Let's just have one.
Yep.
So they did that, and all that did was open up this hole.
That's right.
That says, now we could have 1,000 court cases because these guys are going to want to transfer still anyway.
It's almost like it's a leaky ship, and every time you fix a leak, the ship continues to sink, which is what's happening with the NCAA. There's no doubt.
Yeah, there is one good thing that is out there right now is 2 separate 5-week windows to hold a certain number of practices in the spring and in the summer, to where you can do a certain number of your practices in the spring window and a certain number of your practices in the summer window. That to me would help if I was in Kirby Smart or any other coach's shoes. If I lose players I've worked with in the spring for a certain number of practices, it's almost the NFL OTAs models. They're just trying to get away from saying the OTA model. And then I'm able to get my team that's going to be there in the fall back in the summer for a certain number of practices.
Yeah.
That's the model I'm for. Get rid of spring football, get rid of the spring games. Let's go to May, June, July, August practices leading into the season. I think it's better for your health and everything else, too.
We're going to end up running off really good coaches. I heard Nate Oates on a national show a couple of weeks ago, and they asked him about the NBA, and, he kind of skirted around it, but didn't say, like, I think he really is drawn and fascinated by the NBA game. And, back to you bringing up Chris Beard's about to have his first losing season, or is having his first losing season as a head coach. Great coaches can't consistently win in today's college basketball. And I think that's one of the things that sucks about what's going on with Stephen Pearl and Auburn. He's got a completely made-over roster, and there are coaches that have coached for 10, 15 years that wouldn't have success possibly with this roster. It's just really, really difficult, and the only teams and organizations in football and basketball that will be consistent are the biggest spenders.
So Volfan, I think, though, has hit the point here in the chat. With all of these rules and rule changes done away to the portal and the blind transfer and all that, who is driving the change on these for the NCAA? Like, who's beating the drum? We've got to change this. We've got to change this. We've got to change this. Who's beating the drum? It's the coaches, right?
Yes.
And as Volfan says, they got to stop listening just to the coaches on rule changes, because who are the coaches ultimately out for the most?
I'm worried about me, my team, and my immediate problem.
Bingo.
Yeah.
And that's how you end up just patching holes, is let's just fix the immediate problem and not the down-the-road problem. Because I don't care about the down-the-road problem. I may not be the coach at State University for the down-the-road problem.
That's right.
I'm the coach today, and I need this problem fixed for next season so I can keep my job.
And a lot of coaches are wanting to do this to help me right now, while at the same time will be willing to do the same thing to another coach.
Yeah.
I don't want this guy stabbing me in the back, but I am willing to take that knife and stab this guy in the back to take away one of his players.
That
will help fill one of my holes.
Volfan's dead on. They got to quit just listening to the coaches on this stuff. There's got to be other voices that impact rule changes on this.